Hey guys, welcome. I wanted to connect with you guys so I can talk a little bit about the topic of user research because I've been talking a lot about it recently, I'm sure you know. And I wrote an article that was over on Medium last week that has been gaining a lot of traction, and it's all about minimum viable research. And the idea is that if your boss or your stakeholders or your team members are resistant to doing user research, then you can't expect to go out of the gate and do a huge research project with them. And that's where minimum viable research comes in. And in that article, I talked through some ideas on how to get their buy-in and choose a really narrow thing to research so that you can gain their trust and baby step your way to doing more user research. But today I wanted to talk more about the idea of why you can't afford to skip user research in the first place, because I think probably a lot of you struggle with feedback and pushback from your colleagues and your boss and your stakeholders about, why should we even do research in the first place? And they give you all these kinds of reasons. And so I thought it'd be good today to give you, let's see, I'm just looking at my notes, 5 things that really are going to be influenced by not doing user research. So a couple little housekeeping things here. I haven't played around with YouTube, or no, Google. What are we on right now? YouTube Live, sorry. And so I know you guys can ask questions, and I'm just gonna pop over there and see if we have any questions over there. Okay, I'm gonna type a little message to make sure this works, because sometimes the UX of these things is super crazy. So just a second. All right, hopefully, if you can see my chat, maybe you can chat something else in the chat box, because I really want to be able to answer your questions on this as well. I don't just want it to be me talking and talking. So looks like that chat is working. I'm not sure. I don't see anything, but it doesn't matter. So also, if you're new here, I am Sarah Doody, a user experience designer and entrepreneur. I'm based out in New York City, but I'm in LA right now for a little bit. And I'm also the founder of something called the UX Notebook, which is a weekly user experience newsletter that I created to help people really just learn how to think like a designer, because I get so many questions in my inbox, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I realized that a lot of people were just really wanting to understand how to think like a designer and get inside of a designer's head. So that's why I created the UX Notebook newsletter. Anyway, let's jump in here. So the idea of why you can't afford to skip user research. So I think there's 5 really great benefits to doing user research, and hopefully you can use these on your boss or your colleagues or stakeholders to help them see why doing user research is really important and beneficial for everyone on the team. I have some notes too, so I'm looking at my notes. Okay, so if your product isn't launched yet, I really love research because it helps us identify the early adopters. So what do I mean by that? Well, in order to launch the first version of your product, you need to have people to launch to. So how are you going to find those people? Well, research will help you figure out who the best people are to launch your first version of your product to. So why are these early adopters, or where are these early adopters? So let's say we are working on something in the fitness industry. How would I go about finding early adopters? Well, one way I would do it is I would think about, where do these people already hang out? And I'd go and find them. So I would look in fitness Facebook groups. I would look in other online groups, maybe LinkedIn, maybe like your community has online groups. I would also look on social media. So I would look on Instagram, for example, because there's so many fitness people on Instagram. And I would also maybe rely on things like Craigslist. I know Craigslist can sometimes get a bad reputation concerning recruiting people for user research and things, but I've had really great success, and I think that's because I put a lot of time into the exact post I put on Craigslist, and I'm really careful to identify the types of people I want to talk to and the types of people I don't want to talk to. But research helps us identify those early adopters so that we have the right people using our product who are best suited to hopefully have the problem that we hope to solve. And then when they use our product, their feedback will be really, really contextual and valuable as we move forward, versus if we launched our product or new feature to people who weren't our early adopters, we'd probably receive feedback all over the board because not each of these people had a really specific or similar problem, and therefore they wouldn't find the same value in the solution. Whereas if we can bring the same type of people who share a very common problem to our solution, which is the first version of our product, then we're more likely to get that critical feedback that helps us move forward and make changes and continue iterating on our product. So identify your early adopters. Second is validating your hypothesis. So, of course, before you set out to do any building and invest your time and money into either a new product or a new feature on your existing product, you want to go into it with some type of hypothesis, some type of statement that you are going to build towards. And then once you launch, research will tell you if that hypothesis was right or not. But you need to make sure that whatever you launch is based on one of these hypotheses so that you know how the heck you're going to determine, was this a success or not? So whenever I launch a new product or do a new experiment, which I'm now, before I do anything, I think to myself, okay, how am I going to measure if this is successful or not? And I can't do that unless I have a strong hypothesis, and then I can't validate that hypothesis unless I do research. So for example, I'm researching right now how to engage with you guys better through online video, because I want to engage with you more beyond just my weekly user experience newsletter. So my hypothesis is that video is going to be great because you can listen to it while you're at work, and then it'll be recorded and we can repurpose it over onto, say, YouTube, and you can listen to it whenever you're available in case you're not available, right now. But now I'm testing out the different tools that I can use. So we're testing out Google Hangouts. I'm not even sure what this is called, Yahoo or YouTube Live. I think it's YouTube Live. Testing out Facebook Live, testing out Periscope. And in about 3 weeks, that's our hypothesis. And then in about 3 weeks, we'll figure out through the research we're doing what platform is the best. But you can't validate that hypothesis unless you do your research. Another great thing I love about research is that it helps you identify kind of underserved people or problems that you never knew your users had. So, for example, whenever Twitter first started out, they, you could send messages and things back and forth, but there was no @ symbol kind of feature where it highlighted the user and things, and the hashtag wasn't a part of it. And naturally, through the way people use Twitter, these features came about. And so that's why now today, there's all the @ symbol. I mean, the @ symbol was there, but like the feature to mention people and see who's mentioned you, et cetera, that all evolved from how people use your product. So the whole point is that you launch your product or your feature with one idea in mind, and then you see what the heck people do with it, because Yes, you have ideas on the solution it can provide, but let's face it, sometimes the best ideas just come out of using a product and seeing what everyday people are doing with it. So that's another great benefit to research, but you don't get to see that unless you're monitoring and really listening to your product. And listening can come through two ways. It can come through looking at your analytics and interpreting what's going on, where are people going, what's working, what's not working concerning content, design, user flows, etc. But listening also comes through talking to your users and running usability tests. And I am a big proponent of talking to people one-on-one because it helps you dig a little deeper than what you just see on the surface of analytics. Because in a one-on-one interview, I can say to people, well, why did you think that? And what happened next? And ask these really helpful follow-up questions to everything they tell me so that we can dig deeper and deeper and deeper and get to the why, the core of what just data sometimes can't tell us. We could guess what the data is telling us, but something different happens when you talk to people one-on-one and you're able to ask those follow-up questions. So underserved customers or unknown problems that people had. You'll just never know those unless you do research. Another thing, I guess this kind of dovetails on that, but another interesting thing that comes about from research is the idea of being able to discover crazy workarounds that people have for whatever problem you're trying to solve. So anytime I'm working on a new product, I love being able to interview people one-on-one, especially in their home or office, because it lets me into their environment. And by that, I mean like the physical place, but also it lets me see them use their own devices and their own software and things. And that's really important because if someone is using software or devices that are not their own, they're not going to be comfortable and they're not going to behave with the confidence and familiarity that they have if they're using something else. If someone wanted to do a research interview with me and put me on a PC, they would get very different behavior than if they just let me use my own Mac that I'm familiar with and, my dented laptop and my broken delete key and everything. It makes me feel more comfortable using the device and the software that I'm used to. I use Chrome, but if I were on a Mac, if I was on a PC, I would really struggle if I had to figure out how to use the PC and what's a right click and what's a left click and, how do you use Internet Explorer. So all that to say, try to interview people in person, but I want to get back to that idea of workarounds because I kind of just went on a tangent. But the idea of workarounds. So this is a great example. I was doing some research for a finance product kind of around personal investing and retirement. And I was in this guy's house, and in the middle of the interview, he says, okay, I have to go get something for you. And so he goes away and comes back, and he had this binder that he told us he'd had since he was a child in his teenage years, because the whole topic was around, like I said, personal investing, personal finance. And he kept this binder that he had started with his dad, where he would write down the stock price each day or every Saturday or something. And then that's how he got into investing, and he monitored things, but he kept it all on paper in this binder. And that was interesting because he still continued to do that today. Even though he has all this software online, he just talked about how he had this workaround where somehow writing it down on paper helped him kind of track and I think stay focused, honestly, because I think one of the problems that came out of that interview was that he was just super overwhelmed with all the distraction that can happen once you're on a finance site. And so he loved just the focus that came from dealing with it in pen and paper. So that was an interesting workaround. We didn't really act on that finding, but it was just interesting to learn that workaround. But through research, you'll definitely find all these workarounds and solutions that people have. And you know what? It's especially interesting when you start to see how people are using existing software to solve a problem for themselves, where that software may not have been intended for that. So, another example, earlier this year, a friend of mine told me that she was looking for a food tracker, like something where she could put in what she was eating just to monitor it and get an idea of like what the heck she was consuming every day. And I said, "Oh, there's tons of apps for that. Why don't you just go to the iTunes store and get, or the App Store and get one of the apps?" And she said that so many of those apps for her almost had too many features, and she didn't need to get down to the granularity of calories and what brand of cream cheese she ate or something. She just wanted to have a record and go back and do it in a really simple way. So she told me that she ended up just using a Google spreadsheet to track that. Now, that was interesting because it just showed me, kind of similar to the finance thing, I guess, how it just provided this place where it was distraction free and she could just make it more flexible than these food tracking apps that you find out there. So research, super important because it helps you identify these workarounds. And then sometimes you'll find that from these workarounds, you'll have like an aha moment where you realize, wow, all these people are all doing X as a workaround. So therefore, what if we actually made X as a product? You might not have been planning to do that, but if you heard that enough, then that might be something to act on. Another reason why I love research, and this might be one of my favorites, especially in the beginning, is because it helps you learn about competitors far faster than you could on your own. So when you are talking to people one-on-one, hopefully, or in a focus group setting, inevitably, you will have a list of other products come up that people use. And every time this happens, people start naming off all these apps and products that I have never heard of before that end up being amazing. And I would never have found those on my own because I'm just too busy and there's tons of apps out there today. But by talking to people, you're then able to learn about these apps and, more importantly, understand how they use them. Because if you're in person, they might bring it up on their phone and show you exactly what they do. And then just through observation, you can look and kind of see, is the app, does it have a lot of activity or does it look like they've only logged into it once? But it's really valuable. And I guess, you could argue, why do you have to talk to people in person? And I would say it affords you the opportunity to go deeper in the moment when they're thinking about it. So if, for example, we decided to run a survey, and for the fitness industry, let's say we're researching fitness, we do a fitness survey, and one of the questions has to do with competitors, and people list out their competitors. Well, that's nice, but we could never then really ask strong follow-up questions and see the person use the app because we're not in person with them. Now, of course, we could have a question at the end that says, okay, if you are open to having someone follow up, put your email and we'll contact you. That's good, but we miss the opportunity to do it like in the moment. And so there's something about being able to ask these follow-up questions as soon as someone identifies one of these competitor apps. If we're doing it in follow-up, they'll almost feel like this is an assumption, but I think people would kind of feel like, oh, it's a chore. I have to go talk to so-and-so and talk about that app they wanted to hear about. Versus in the moment, I feel like there's just more authenticity and excitement and rawness from people that you're going to get, which is exactly what you want when you're doing research. You don't want someone to kind of be sitting there and give like programmed answers or feel like they're just, checking off the task list of, oh, talk to that person. Anyway, those are the 5 kind of main reasons why I really think you can use when trying to talk to your boss about how to get buy-in for user research and help them understand some of the value that you're going to be able to identify these early adopters so that you launch to the right people and you get the right feedback, and so that you don't have to spend a ton of money on marketing, honestly, because if you launch the first version to the right people, they will not need to be kind of coaxed and convinced to and pulled in, because you'll already have them in your inner circle and they'll be happy to use your product. Also, it's important to get those early adopters because they will love feeling like they are co-creating the product with you. Now, that doesn't mean they're literally telling you, the exact features, but you're able to have this kind of ping pong back and forth with them where you're constantly getting their feedback. Sometimes companies do this in a private Facebook group. I'm in a couple of really great private Facebook groups. One of them is for everyone that uses a product called Teachable. And Teachable is a platform for people to host their online courses. That's where I host my research course. And I love being in that Facebook group because even though I'm a UX designer, I feel like when I'm in that group, I'm a user first, and I'm constantly giving them ideas and complaining and giving suggestions of what could be better. Obviously, because I'm a UX designer, but more so because I am a user. And so if you can have those early adopters using your product and all in one place in a Facebook group or something, you will get invaluable feedback that you would have never got if you had people that were not early adopters, because they're just not going to love you. And you want people that are really excited about your product and are going to be in it with you for the long term. So identifying your early adopters, validating your hypothesis, we already talked about that, mainly so that you are able to confirm if what you built is successful or not. And if it's not successful, then you have to go back and adjust course. Also, understanding your underserved customers, we talked about that, discovering workarounds, and understanding your competitors. So those are kind of the main reasons why I really believe you can't afford to skip user research, because you lose out on all those opportunities. And I guess at the end of the day, the big thing is that you lose out on the opportunity to listen to your customers. Maybe if you're having problems convincing your boss to do research, maybe you need to reframe it as, look, this isn't about spending 30 grand doing some giant research project, although there is a time and place for that. Instead, this is about us listening to our customers. And when we don't listen to our customers, then we end up building the wrong things or the right thing at the wrong time, or we build too many things at once and then they come in, it's a confusing experience. And all that is really expensive. It's time consuming. And when you think of your team, when your team works really hard and launches a product or a feature and then no one uses it, or no one uses it in the way that it was intended, that is really frustrating. And it kind of is a letdown for everyone involved. And it affects your morale. And then that affects the willingness of people to kind of go the extra mile or think about the product at a strategic level. And eventually, if you repeat this habit of not doing research and launching stuff that no one uses, your team's just going to feel like an assembly line, and then you're not going to get good work out of them. So it's not just about doing research so you can understand your customers or see, did a red or a green button work better. You have to understand the side effects that not doing research has as well. So I would love to answer any questions if anyone has questions. And like I said, I'm trying to figure out the UX of this whole Google Hangouts Live, which is how you do live events on YouTube. So let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, let's bring back the chat tool. Cool. Okay, any questions? Oh, here's a question that someone asked me just the other day, actually. So someone said, how long should your one-on-one interviews be? And honestly, that depends on how much do you want to learn. It sounds ridiculous, but I think if you plan to just do usability testing, I would schedule them generally for an hour. And the reason I say that is I think 30 minutes is too short, because what if people are running a little late? What if you have technical difficulties? You never know what happens. And I like scheduling an hour to have that buffer time, because it's better to schedule an hour and then have someone, be done in 45 minutes or let them go after half an hour than to be rushed. That's the worst feeling in the world, to be rushed when it comes to research. So I generally schedule everything to be an hour, unless it's very, very short, but or it's just a telephone conversation or something, or an in-person. But if we're doing usability testing, I never like to schedule it for less than an hour. Another question that someone asked me was, how do I feel about compensating people for research? So I would say, I think it's important to compensate people. And some people use the word incentive. And I think that's where people start to get a bad feeling about incentivizing people, like it's going to skew the research or something, and people are just going to tell you exactly what they think you want to hear. But I would say, I think it's important to compensate people because you're taking their time. And so you should reward that for them. I think it's a nice gesture. It also helps ensure people show up, let's face it. But I would say, on the topic of, does compensating people skew the research and make people, like I said, say what they think you want to hear? I don't think it does. And here's why. Because I think the moment that you can get someone talking about a problem or talking about something they're passionate about, if they were coming into it with this attitude of, I'm just going to tell them what they want to hear, that's what I'm going to do. If that were the case, that goes away the moment you get that person telling stories or complaining or talking about a product they love or they hate. And then you don't have to worry about it. But honestly, I've never felt like I was in a scenario where someone was just kind of like telling me exactly what they thought I wanted to hear. And the good thing is, if you feel that does start to happen, you can kind of adjust your questions or change your body language or something to make them feel more comfortable, so that maybe that kicks them out of that tell you what you want to hear mindset, I guess. Anyway, I gotta go. I have a flight to catch. I'm heading back to New York in a little bit. I'm just south of LA right now, but I am gonna do more of these, and I would love it if you could leave a comment below and ask me your questions about user research so that I can answer them in future broadcasts. And if you want to learn more about user experience, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter at theuxnotebook.com. We'll link to that as well. And then also, if you are curious about learning more about user research, I invite you to check out a course I just launched. It's called User Research Fundamentals, and I will put that in the comments below. And actually, I realize I may as well just type it into this window right here. Let me make sure I typed it right. It's kind of long. Userresearchfundamentals.com. Cool. So that's there. But yeah, like I said, concerning doing research for myself, because I don't just do research for other companies. I'm always researching for my own business. I'm researching what performs best in my newsletter. I'm researching what performs best on Twitter. What's a great length of an article for Medium? What processes work better? But right now, I'm in this research mode of what live video is the best way to connect with people. So this is test number 1. We're going to try out Periscope and something else later this week. Oh, Facebook Live. And then we'll make a call and we'll start doing them more regularly once we find out what people like. So That's all. Thank you for watching. And if you want to learn more about UX, like I said, .com, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for coming.